Welcome to the Open Mic podcast show with Mike Midgley.
Hey, and welcome to the Open Mic podcast. And on today's episode, we're going to be speaking all about you. Yes, that's you, the entrepreneur. And when you look back at the concept, we need to strip that back, sidestepping, the default trap that many entrepreneurs fall into by focusing first on business strategy and tactics, ahead of understanding their own mindset and real true potential. It's a mistake that, we see often. And I'm excited to be covering today the science and arts of self-mastery, neuroscience, transformational psychology and mindfulness. When I look back over my career, especially over the last sort of 25 years or so, I think for any successful outcome, I think you'll agree, for that to materialize, whether that's in life or business, it's going to require a well thought out and detailed plan. You're going to have to practice it, put some resources into it, and you're going to have to invest into it. But that's not just your business, guys. For you entrepreneurs out there, that's about investing in you personally. And you've got to see that you as very much like the foundations of a building. You don't want to be building a building on weak foundations, and neither should you be building a business on weak management or weak personal sort of skill base. And, for you guys who follow my stuff, I'll say as I see it. I'm not here to sort of give you a cuddling on many occasions. I'm here to be honest with you, because there's too many people out there who ultimately are going to just gloss over it. And, whether that's to sell you something or whatever, you're listening to this because you want it straight out of the gate and you want it de-fluffing out, and that's what it is. So having the mindfulness about simple things such as, understanding the resources that, are available to you. And ultimately, again, anybody follows my stuff, and know I talk heavily about, time, energy, and money, and in that order as far as priority. We know money can be replaced, but it's often confused as the primary resource. And please don't put it to the bottom of those three for sure, because it can easily be replaced. Energy wasted, well, it depends how durable you are as an individual, as I suppose. But energy wasted is seriously affecting, your trajectory, and the lost opportunity with wasting energy. Never mind, you can imagine what that costs, more than you can ever forecast. Whereas time, that is the ultimate crime. And if you're wasting that, well, you really want to sit down, take a good look at yourself, and really get hold of that. Because if you've got any doubts about this, I encourage you to search Steve Jobs' last words online. And it's a bit of a touching one. I apologize for the emotional outburst here, but it's clear that Steve Jobs weren't short of money. But on his deathbed, if you read that sort of statement, it should, if you've got any ounce of a heart, bring a tear to your eye, and it sort of puts things into perspective about how time is one of the most important things. And, over the years, I've studied people like copywriters like Dan Kennedy. And I know Dan Kennedy used to have a time clock in his office, and it used to count down. And, imagine that's the day you're going to stop. Look about where you're at. What are you doing? Are you mindful about that, about putting your resources into the best area? So I'm not sure if Dan still has that clock going down at zero or not, but it's certainly something that got me focused on time as being a commodity that's not one to be wasted, and as developing myself, time management, being mindful about that. It's one of those precious resources for sure. So think about it, especially around self-development, to master your emotions, and to build a better you. It's essential. So I'd be keen to hear your feedback, as always, and on the audience, you can leave us a message below. You can shoot us a message on any of the social channels using the hashtag #TheOpenMike. And I'd love to know what your take is on it, and, maybe where you're doing well with time, or, where time management or not really investing in yourself is costing you. But back to today's topic, the science and art of self-mastery, neuroscience, transformational psychology, and mindfulness. I'm absolutely honored to welcome to the show a leading authority and pioneering the inner force formula, Purdeep Sangha, the founder of the Male Entrepreneur and Sangha International. A quick background before I hand over and welcome Purdeep to the show. He's an award-winning author, entrepreneur, life and business master strategy, a husband and a father as well. And Purdeep's background and experience, is exceptional to say the least. An EMBA on innovation leadership. He's a certified innovation executive. He's a certified in financial management, certified lean black belt in business operations, and certified in business operation excellence. Purdeep also hosts his own podcast titled The Male Entrepreneur. So I highly encourage you to go check that out on all the major app channels. It's certainly worth a listen and to build further on what we're going to discuss today. And Purdeep helps entrepreneurs master themselves so they can, take control of their life, really. Society, I think it says, and we'll talk about this in the podcast, it labels masculinity as toxic, which it's not, but for the reason you think. So Purdeep's personal mission is to help men live more fulfilling lives, although for the female audience, we're going to cover some references in here as well for you. So it's, don't tune out if you are a regular female audience. We want you to stick around. There's lots you can learn out of this. And he is very passionate about relationships and helping you raise, happy families. As an entrepreneur, husband and father, Purdeep knows exactly how tough it can be to get that balance between work and life and making sure that you put the right amount of time into there. We're going to put on the show links, all Purdeep's links to his website, which you can check out at themaleentrepreneur.com. And also you can check out Purdeep on LinkedIn, which is linkedin.com/in/Purdeep Sangha. And that's PURDEEPSANGHA. So don't worry if you missed that. We'll get those put in the show notes below. So welcome to the show, Purdeep. Thanks for taking the time for your extremely busy schedule in Canada today. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. And how are you?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thank you. It's a real privilege to be on the show. I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to our conversation and talking about self-mastery and how we can help your listeners really double and triple and quadruple their business, as we talked about before the show here.
That's awesome. And it's fantastic to have you on the show, as I say. I've listened to some of your material on the podcast, looking through, the content that you put out there. And it's so relevant, as a male entrepreneur myself. I see so many, awakenings in what I'm seeing and what I'm listening. So, for you guys out there, if you really want to sort of get control of yourself and that self-mastery, this is going to be an awesome show. And we're going to learn a little bit more about sort of Purdeep's journey in his own words here and his backstory. So tell us a little bit more about your journey today before we get into the meat of the questions, Purdeep. What's the background? I'm looking at your bio. I've seen some of the stuff like Stanford and things like that. Just in your own words, tell us a little bit more about it.
Sure. So I grew up in a small town in British Columbia, Canada. I had immigrant parents who immigrated here in the early 70s, and my dad came to Canada with $11 in his pocket. And all he knew how to do with my mom was really work hard. Yeah. And so it just so happened that they started working in an orchard, and that's what they did for quite a number of years. And that's how I grew up. I literally grew up from the moment the very first memory, I grew up on an orchard. We have pictures of my brother and I being put in, playing in an apple bin as my parents would be working, because sometimes they didn't have childcare.
Yeah.
But that was probably one of the best times of my life, because I grew up in a very mindful environment around nature, around trees, around the cycles of the seasons, and seeing things grow, and not living in a lot of the hustle and bustle that we live in today's society. So, as a typical Indian family, immigrant family, my parents said, "Hey, look, Purdeep, we don't want you to suffer. We don't want you to go through all the challenges that we went through. We want you to get an education and actually become something," right? The typical thing is, as Indians, engineer, lawyer, doctor, right? Those are the typical professions. So I kind of went through school. I was great at academics. I went through school in sciences. I was in biochemistry. And I remember in my third, fourth year in university, I literally was walking to one of the classes, and I looked over, and it was like a scene from a movie with these students walking in super slow motion towards the classroom. And something just clicked in me and said, "Purdeep, you know what? I don't want to be a doctor."
Yeah.
And I literally just switched into business and finance.
So do you think that not that you were pushed that way, but the expectancy, do you think like mum and dad, they thought, yeah, I'll be proud of my son if he becomes that? Did you feel that underweight pressure? Because I know when I speak to entrepreneurs, when I sit in the boardrooms and I work with them, sometimes they'll say, especially when you've got the wrong person in the wrong seat in a boardroom, and it's a slightly different thing, because we're not talking about, you'll understand what I mean here. It might
Absolutely.
be the right seat and the right role, but it's the wrong person in there. And they could be awesome in a different role, but they're in the wrong seat, but they're feeling that pressure. I don't want to let the people down. But making that right decision, usually that person flourishes, don't they, and becomes better, and the company gets better just by having that difficult conversation. And is that how you felt a little bit? Because I know a lot of the listeners feel like that sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say I was always kind of the black sheep out of the family. I always did things out of the norm. But absolutely, those pressures that we face, and even as adults, we face this pressure, because we want to not only impress our parents, but we also want to pay back for the stuff that they've helped us do and achieve. And I know at that point, my biggest thing was I knew how much my parents had suffered and worked and challenged. I remember them working 14-hour days. My mom works, even to this day, works that physical environment. And we're talking about 40 degrees Celsius, heat outdoors, shoveling and stuff. So at that time, absolutely. Yeah, at that time, absolutely. I was actually petrified to talk to my parents about it. And I hid it for a while. I just continued to go to school. I didn't tell them that I switched out and that I was going to do something different. And one thing led to another. And I kind of fell into the corporate world.
Yeah.
It was funny. I went in for my first formal interview in the corporate world, and I sat down with a gentleman, and it just so happened he was a guy that I was tutoring. And he sat down, we had a conversation for about 20, 30 minutes. And at the end of it, he said, okay, when do you want to start? And I said, well, aren't you going to ask me some work-related questions that actually interview me? And he said, well, if you can teach me tax, I'm pretty sure you can do this. Awesome. So I just kind of fell into the corporate world, and I excelled in there. I started from the bottom and I worked my way up. And I was very gung-ho. I've always been a go-getter. As you can see from an academic standpoint, I kind of put my head down and said, I'm going to learn everything I can about business.
Yeah. So
for 2 decades now, I've really been a student of business and self-mastery as well. And at that time, things were great from the corporate perspective. You could say, I was killing it. And my goal was to be a CEO for a major corporation. Yeah. And I had led pretty much every major division in a multi-billion-dollar organization, from marketing to sales to operations, customer experience. I was kind of the go-to guy for if there was a problem or something needed to be upgraded or changed, they would put me ahead of that division. And so I thought I was on the top of the world. But during that time, I also had so many challenges outside of work.
Yeah.
My personal relationship with my wife was struggling. We had a young child at that time, and we were on the verge of divorce. And
that's the pressures of work coming in.
Absolutely. And not even just work. I would take it one step further and say the pressures of not feeling like you're being yourself, not feeling like you're living the life that you were meant to live, and being pressured into doing something that society says you should do. You should be a successful executive, make tons of money, live this certain lifestyle. And so I didn't know what to do at that time. I was really confused. I didn't want to leave my relationship. I didn't want to lose my child at that time in terms of the custody battle, because sometimes what ends up happening is men are kind of left with the short end of the stick. And I said, what do I do now? And I went on this path, had a conversation with my wife and said, we got to make this work. And at the same time, I said, I need to do something what my heart was telling me. And I always had this entrepreneurial mindset and this heart. And I just literally walked into work one day and I quit.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I just want to sort of back you up a couple of steps on, Purdeep, if I could.
Absolutely.
I think it's so relevant to the listeners. You mentioned earlier about where you fell into, the corporate world, and you started at the bottom and you worked your way up. And then you eventually became that go-to guy. And, I'm not sure if you have that in Canada, but we have it here in the UK, and it's called Jack of all trades, master of none type of phrase. And the reason why I want to back you up on this point and just sort of, just get your view on this, is I find myself, you look at my career, fluent in sales, financial management, marketing, sales, operation systems. And it's so ironic. And Jamie said, when he looked at our producer, when he said, have you seen what Purdy does? And I says, yes, I've looked. I says, it's like looking in the mirror. He says, that's exactly what I was going to say. He says, because, Jamie knows I'm a sort of management accountant. Obviously I do sales, marketing, corporate governance and all that sort of stuff. And I've not done it for a £2 billion company, more like an $18-20 million company. So it's a slightly different size. But you do, it comes up there. And the question that I really want to ask you is, how did you find it dealing with, first of all, starting at the bottom? Did you feel that you were unfairly held back or not? Did you feel you were expected too much without the right amount of training? How did you deal with those challenges? Because when we skip over, I worked my way up to the top and became the go-to guy, I'd like to know, some of the challenges that you faced in that journey and how you solved them, because I know the audience is sat there saying, Mike, wind this guy back up, because I'm stuck there now. Help me. I need to work some of this stuff out. So I'd love to know some of your experiences there, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of, Ever since I was a kid, I think I had some really good teachers. And I think they learned some really, I would say, leading edge principles at that time. And they taught me a lot about self-mastery.
Yeah.
And what got me through was really mastering myself.
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing, because I learned more about psychology and neuroscience than anybody else around me.
Yeah.
And I taught myself how to learn more effectively than the average person.
Yeah.
And therefore I could pick up a book and I could read it faster, get more information, and actually apply it better than anybody else around.
Retain it and apply, because it's all about the action, isn't it, as well?
Exactly. So I would go into meetings, I would go into people's offices at that time, and I would literally, if I saw a book on their desk, I would read it and I would finish it before they would, because I did not want to go into a meeting not being able to put myself in that person's head.
And make references and also understand what they're looking at as well.
Exactly. So the biggest challenge that I faced going through the corporate world was my expectations.
Right.
Because I have really high expectations of myself.
Yep.
Like the top notch, because my parents had those expectations of me, and I just kind of lived with that to the point where, one of the examples I like to share is when before my parents had their own orchard, we would work for someone else, and my mom would say, okay, it's break time. We are literally, break is over now.
Yeah.
We're 10 seconds over. We're going back to work, because she said,
discipline.
Discipline. And so I just applied that for myself. And I remember my managers, my CEO saying, Purdeep, how do you finish your stuff so fast? I was just very disciplined and very eager to actually achieve, not for anybody else's benefit, but for my own. Yeah. So my biggest competitor was myself.
So you set your internal bar, is what I call it. You're setting that bar internally, never mind what's going off externally. Set it internally, and if you break that and that's higher, go for it that way.
Exactly. Because in life, for you to accomplish what you want to accomplish, comparing yourself to anybody else is a recipe for disaster.
It is.
It's comparing yourself to yourself and the best you can be. And that's just a principle that I followed through. So the other challenge I faced was my age, because I was the youngest executive. I was a go-getter. I was very moving forward. And people would say, Purdeep, you got to put in your dues, or, at times they would say, what do you know? And I would have to work that much harder to actually excel. And that was my biggest challenge. The time and the work-life balance wasn't a big challenge for me at that time, because I was very disciplined. Yeah. But I had more in the corporate environment. I had more internal challenges than external challenges. And that's one of the biggest reasons what caused me to leave, because I was tired of the infighting. I was tired of the
change committees and all that type of stuff. And
the internal hierarchy and, the ego show. I said, we're here to provide for our clients and provide for our community. We are not here to see who's the best executive, who can get the best results.
Yeah.
And
it's
so
often overlooked, isn't it? And that self-promotion, not necessarily narcissism, but, that self-me versus, actually, let's concentrate on the client and get that result out. And, the bottom line looks after itself, I find, once that's
exactly. You look after your clients and everything else, and your employees and your clients, and everything else falls into place.
It does. So thanks for sharing that with you. And I know we cut in when you said you walked in and quit, but I just think that, there's a lot of people out there sat there saying, I am my own biggest enemy. I spoke to a lady, we have a client, and she's just getting into the video production side. And I've just done a strategy session with her prior to this podcast. And we talked about, she was part of a venue, a really famous venue, and really helped it move forward. And it's now it's now coming back to the forefront, this particular venue. So she says, Mike, do you think I should do a video about it? I said, absolutely. And tell the world about how you helped that venue. She went home and recorded 25 takes and still didn't put it out because she wasn't happy with it. And I said, oh no, you can never be perfect. You can be your own biggest critic. Good is good enough sometimes. You just got to get out there and don't be too critical. And I know a lot of people, and I referenced that. I'll keep the lady's identity anonymous for, just for the sake of it. But a lot of people are so critical inside and they beat themselves up about it. And sometimes that can hold them back as well, which no doubt we're going to speak about later on. But it is, sometimes it's having that confidence, isn't it? And that ability to go out there and say, I can do this. I'm going to be the best judge of my ability, and I'm going to go and get it. It's often missing in a lot of entrepreneurs, the wannabe entrepreneurs versus the real entrepreneurs who've prepared it, like you say, prepared to put that shift in, to put that discipline in and make it happen. So, if you are in that situation, you want to reach out to Purdeep and shoot him a question. Purdeep's also got an amazing online course that's been launched in May. You can visit 360abundance.com. You can watch a webinar, you can take a look at it, and he's got a 12-week program that's going to help you sort of get a hold of it, identify it, and help you come out to be the person that you want to be at the end of it. So if you want to go and check out 360abundance.com, or you can connect with Purdeep on LinkedIn, just search Purdeep Sangha or The Male Entrepreneur, and you'll pick up, Purdeep on the channels. Of course, we'll put these links at the show notes below as well. And if for any reason you want to come back to us, shoot us a message using the hashtag TheOpenMike, and we'll obviously get that to Purdeep Tamta on your behalf if you're struggling to get hold of him. So thanks for sharing that, Purdeep. I really appreciate it. And just picking up that backstory about, you walked in, you thought, I'm getting up, I'm going and quitting. Talk to me about that, because I love when the people, we are a clean show, so we have a clean rating on the podcast, but when people stick two fingers up to corporate world because that burning entrepreneurship comes out and goes for it. So I want to hear about this in all the details. So first, tell me, what was the switch? And I know you give me the little bit of a backstory about yourself and your wife, where you said, we've got to make this work. I get that. But there's always that switch. There's always that one thing that says enough is enough. It's that tripwire that says, I'm going to go and do it, and bang, you're going to do it. So before you do, tell me, what was that ultimate switch? When you listen to Skip Miller, there's always 3 levels of why. Why are you doing this? Then why? And then why again? And I really want to go down. What was that switch? Because I know, again, the listeners in Entrepreneurland, whether they're thinking about taking investment in, bringing another partner in, firing a client, expanding into another country, it be that decisive sort of play. And I really want to know what that switch was. And then talking about the quit and then the journey that you've started, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was almost like the perfect storm. And I remember I spent an entire day, which I do once a week, and I really just put my head down and learn about specific disciplines. And it was the perfect storm. I still remember that day. I was reading a book by Dalai Lama, Jack Canfield, and it was Tony Robbins. And it all kind of hit me. It was like someone just came and pushed me off my chair and said, Purdeep, what are you doing? You're living this life that is not true to who you are. Get up, be a man, and do what you were meant to do, and create the life that you've always wanted to create. Money, status, put that all aside. What is it that you love doing? Yeah. And that was a moment. And it took me back to a moment when I was, I don't know the exact age, maybe 7, 8, 9 years old. And I was playing on my driveway. And I remember this moment like it was yesterday with Hot Wheels. And I remember I don't know why at that age I would ever think that, but I was thinking, I want to be my own boss. I want to have my own business, and I want to help good people create good things in life. And I just told my wife, I said, I'm done. And she looked at me and she said, are you serious? She's like, to this moment, she says, that look in your eye, she said, I'll never forget it. Cause she's like, there was no way anybody could convince you. Yeah. And I walked into work and I spoke to one of my CEO at that time. And I said, this is what I'm looking to do. And he said, are you absolutely sure? And I said, yep. And everybody at that time. So it was a very interesting conversation. It taught me 2 lessons. One, you got to take that leap of faith. Yeah. Because if you don't, you're always going to think of the regret, and you could waste years and energy and time and resources doing something that you're not passionate about, that doesn't bring you true fulfillment. Yeah, the second is loyalty, because I've always been loyal to a T, to the people around me at work, to my organization, to my corporation. Yeah,
because you're appreciative of the opportunity, and I know you've put in, but they've allowed and developed, haven't they?
Exactly. And that moment taught me that the people in the organization, not that they were all out for themselves, but I was just another employee. Because I walked away, and I would say 95% of the people I never spoke to again, not from my own accord, but because they felt like I had left them high and dry. Yeah. Because they were transitioning me to take over certain parts of the business, and they just said, okay, well, he's gone. Well, obviously he wasn't loyal to us. Yeah. So that journey was interesting, because a couple of weeks later, I just sat there and I said, okay, WTF. What do I do now? Because I literally just burned all bridges, not because I wanted to, but because it was
how it played out.
It played out, and it was the best thing I could have ever done. Yeah. And then doors, it was interesting, because the first few weeks was just kind of, I would say, redefining myself, because I went from being what I was kind of like the guy in the industry across Canada in specific things and had a reputation to being this nobody. And then I said, okay, I have to literally start from scratch.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that was what would be the word? Would it be painful,
Scary,
discouraging, redefining? I would say even my confidence level hit rock bottom, because I was just like, okay, no one knows me now. And it just proves that a lot of the stuff that we think is self-confidence isn't really self-confidence.
Yeah.
It's being praised by other people. It's other signs that aren't really true to your own being and your own self-confidence.
Yeah, the surface, aren't they? They're like false on the surface.
Surface, yes. And that was me. But ever since I've been studying self-mastery, neuroscience, psychology ever since. So here I was the guy. I was a personal trainer at the age of 17, and I was helping people, transform themselves since the age of 17. All my friends would come to me with their problems and challenges, because I was a rational, mature one that knew about certain things. And here I was not being able to help myself because I just didn't know what to do. And I just had to reflect, and I went and kind of started again. And I said, okay, so how am I going to redefine myself? And I I said, I'm going to shoot in the dark, and this is what I'm going to do. I wrote a couple of books and just went forward, and I ended up picking up some really high profile clients at that time that opened up doors for me. And it just kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah. And the power of networking. And I think that the key thing I just want to push out to the listeners, and I'd be keen to get your view on this, Purdeep, as well, is that you have to get out there. Now,
yes.
Whatever format that is, I'm not saying that for everybody going and shaking hands in a networking event or doing an e-webinar or a social post or becoming an influencer, it doesn't matter. Whatever your industry works, whatever your confidence levels are, that you have to go and get it. If you're going to sit there, it doesn't matter if you're sat in the city centre of London or Toronto or LA, and there's a million people walking past you. They don't care. They're not just going to come and knock on your head and go, hey, here's the opportunity of a lifetime. You have to go out there and get it. What I'd ask you to do is get a hashtag, print it on a piece of paper, stick it on your wall, put it on your phone as a screensaver, your desktop, go and get it. Hashtag go and get it. We have a series of hashtags here, in our agency, and we have, go do the hustle, go make it happen, get in the game, all these type of hashtags. The branding, they've got some kudos around that, but there's a subliminal message there. Get your ass off the chair, going out there, go make it happen, go knock some doors, go meet some people, go tell them, then go listen, and give and get out there. Because if you don't, you're just going to sit there and self-doubt. And again, if you need some help with that, I've got all sorts of resources, PDFs, videos, blog articles. Just shoot me a message using the hashtag TheOpenMike, and we'll get those sent out to you to hopefully give you a kickstart. But what's your take on that, Purdeep? I mean, I'm fairly passionate about that and going to kick in the ass, because nobody's ever come and dropped a penny in my bowl. I've always had to go out there and get it, type of thing.
Oh, absolutely. I love that hashtag, go get it. That actually reminds me of one of my mentors that said the exact same thing, go get it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what you need to do. That's the mentality that you have to have as an entrepreneur. Otherwise, you will not survive.
Yeah.
Right. Those entrepreneurs that make it through those tough times, which every entrepreneur has, it comes down to those moments when you hit rock bottom and what you tell yourself. And that's really the art of self-mastery. And that's kind of what led me to where I am today, where my background was in business. And I just very, I would say initially, I found out right away that as I was working with entrepreneurs, I just thought people knew this kind of stuff. I thought people knew self-mastery skills. I thought people would normally sit down and read up on neuroscience on the weekend like I do. No, they don't.
They definitely don't.
Yeah. And so 80% of the work that I was doing with entrepreneurs as I got in and built my business was around the self-mastery. They would hire me to grow their profits. And it would soon become, hey, look, we got to change your perspective on this, your emotional baselines on these. We got to change it's basically an entire formula that I use. But then I just opened up the doors for me to say, Purdeep, wow, and this was tough too, because I was known as a business expert.
Yep.
And for me now to transition into a self-mastery expert was a big move as well.
Yep.
But it was probably the best thing that I ever did, because it just opened all these other doors. And as I went forward with this journey, created the Male Entrepreneur brand, it would just became more evident that I was so many guys out there, especially, and the same applies for women. But the reason why I chose men is because I've been there. I've been in the situation. I'm a man myself. I know what it's like to struggle in business, in your personal life, and balance a young family or an older family, or just balance a family in general. And a lot of guys out there are feeling like they're left alone. There's so many groups out there for women.
Yeah.
So many groups to help female entrepreneurs, very few for men.
Yeah.
And men, we have this ego. We put up this masquerade sometimes to say, we don't need the help. And we're kind of resistant to getting that help. And so for me, it was creating a safe environment for men to say, okay, I can reach out, ask my questions, and actually get some business advice, but then also on the self-mastery side.
Yeah, and you're not fearful of ridicule or anything, because like you say, people just expect, it's Mike or it's Purdeep or it's whoever, they'll be okay. And it's not, because that mental side of it's exceptionally challenging. And I share just a real quick story about, we were growing, we were doing, this is UK sterling. Back in 2003, we're doing 4.4 million pounds sterling. So it's about, at the time, $6.5 million in revenue. We were just becoming a non-quoted PLC, a publicly traded company. I was a CEO of that company, founder of it. We've grown it to that level in 2.5 years as a wheeled asset finance company. And we've got a new non-exec in. He was a FTSE 100 guy. We're going to go on AIM. AIM, for you guys who are not sure, that's alternative investment market in the UK on the London Stock Exchange. And we were raising venture capital, and we were going, and all the teams looking at me. And the wanted answers, the management team, the executive team, and then their managers and line managers. But ultimately, they're all looking at me and they're saying, hey, what's happening? And I'm sort of looking over my shoulder and thinking, who am I looking for? And there was nobody there. I've brought Bill in as my non-exec, and he was amazing. But I felt so alone, Purdy, so alone. I'd got all this. And in another 28 months, we took my business to 12 million pounds, which is about $15 million, $16 million. Franchised it 68 times and things like that. But the point I'm trying to get to is not forget the result, forget the growth, forget this. I was being featured in the, wants to watch list, double spread presses in our industry. And it all looked great. But behind the shell, believe you me, I was an emotional wreck. At home, I wasn't seeing the kids, leaving the house at 6:30 in the morning, coming back at 8 at night, missing breakfast, missing bedtime, work-life balance. But, the persona is, he's a tough guy, he can make it. Let me tell you, I was a nervous wreck for 3.5 years. And how I got through that, I don't know. Did I have anybody to reach out to apart from a non-exec? No. So, if you are sat there, there's people like Purdy who can help you with this type of stuff. So don't be embarrassed about it. The first sign of it is raise your hand and say, hey, I need help. And, that's what I did. I got a non-exec. There's different ways of dealing with it. That emotional sort of side of it, you don't be embarrassed, I think is what I'm saying. But I certainly needed it. I had a tough old time, and we kept us family together, but there were some rough old times at home as well.
Yeah, I bet that. And the biggest thing for people to realize is that you're not the only one. Probably in most situations, 9 out of 10 people feel the exact same way you do. Yeah. And that's the big thing. I work with, very successful people. That's great to hear your story, Mike. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna have to, dig a little deeper and hear some more about that. But people that make a lot of money, men that make a lot of money, but they're absolutely miserable inside. They have the finances, they have the home, they have the fancy cars.
Doesn't matter. When you look back, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. You're absolutely right. And so rebuilding their life and restructuring it based on what makes them happy is the most important thing. And that's why, if I just kind of wrap up where my story is that last year, the nail in the coffin for me in terms of, this term is actually, it's interesting because my father passed away last year, and he passed away suddenly. Thank you. He passed away suddenly. He was on the orchard. Just the events, what led up to him passing away was, I'm a big believer in karma, that everything happens for a reason. And he was meant to pass at that time. And he passed away suddenly from a heart attack. But that moment that he passed was the signal for me. It was almost like he was saying, Purdeep, you got to do this tenfold now. Yeah. Because my dad, being an entrepreneur, he struggled with some stuff as well. He's the most magnificent man I've ever met in terms of taught me the masculinity side, taught me to love, taught me to be myself, that everybody's human. You make mistakes, especially today as men. we have this expectation that we have to be perfect, and no one can ever live up to that or meet that expectation.
Yeah.
And so that drags us down that much more in terms of the expectations that society has on us and we have on ourselves. Absolutely. So I just kind of put the metal to, put my foot down on the pedal and said, I'm going to move forward and just kind of expand the Male Bra Entrepreneur brand. And it's been great, led me to this point. And it's really about helping men. And as I mentioned before with you, Mike, is I help women as well. But my main passion right now, because I don't know if it's happening in the UK, but it's definitely happening in North America. And this is not against women out there by any means. I have total respect. I was raised by more women than men, is that masculinity is taking a hit, and that there is this perception that masculinity is toxic when it's not. If you take a look, and these are principles I share and teach in terms of self-mastery, is that both masculine and feminine energies are present in both men and women. And right now, in a lot of aspects, the masculine energy in men is being put down. But it is the most, I would say, solid and strengthful thing that a family unit needs. Yeah. That men need to be successful entrepreneurs, because in order for us to drive forward, it's our goal-oriented energy. It's that driven energy, right? It's that never give up, that total self-confidence. And that comes from our masculine energy. That's what is needed to be a successful entrepreneur.
No, absolutely. Well, thanks ever so much for sharing the backstory, Purdeep. It's been amazing, and there's so many similarities, not only with yourself, but the other successful entrepreneurs that I see. Determination, decisiveness, taking that leap of faith, getting out there, believing in your true values. It's everybody I seem to interview, and whether they've had a bad time, they're coming through it, or they're at the top of the mountain again, there is always the consistent things that go through it. Yeah. And again, so if you're out there listening and you've lost your way a little bit, or you just don't know where to start with you, have a good look in the mirror, start to decide what you want, and take some actions. And like you say, you can do a lot worse than just check out 360abundance.com and check out the webinar that Purdeep puts up there, and follow the on-screen instructions to register for that. And there'll be a lot of value for you to take a look into that. So thanks again for being on the show, Purdeep. It's always great to have a killer podcast host like yourself on there as well. And as I say, if you want to learn more about Purdeep before we get into any more, you can always hop over and check out The Male Entrepreneur on all the major podcast channels, and we'll go from there. So thanks again. Appreciate your journey. Congratulations on your success and coming out the other side. It's always good to see you out there. I know your work's incredible. It's going to be an awesome podcast. So let's buckle up and let's get to learn more about the detail and the deeper stuff.
Awesome.
So you talk and you mentioned, Purdeep, about how to align yourself so that you're in a state of total power and creation. And I know here in the UK, we're like action takers, and the theoretical side is one thing, but translating that to do it. And, you know as well as I do, and you know who I'm talking about when you see the people out there pushing all this theoretical stuff out there. It's great, and I've no doubt it's positive in a lot of ways. But I think what a lot of people miss is the deeper understanding of how to apply that in real terms. And I get a lot of people saying to me, Purdeep, that Mike, I've seen this guy. What do you think of this guy or this girl on, social or on one of these channels or blogs? And how do I translate that? How do I do that? How do you think it's worthwhile doing? So when you talk about how to align yourself so that you're in a state of total power and creation, help us understand that and go a little bit deeper and help the audience understand what that is and how to implement it.
Yeah, great question there. So the first thing is, I completely agree with you. So there's a lot of books out there when it comes to mindset and changing yourself and transforming yourself. And this is one thing that I really sat down and took a look at and said, okay, a lot of these people talk about it. There's concepts, there's theories, but no one really gives you a formula. So what is a system? And having a science background myself, I like facts. I like stuff that you can put into practice. I like stuff that can be proven over and over again to get the same results. And I said, okay, what are the key components when it comes to psychology, neuroscience, even quantum physics, and mindfulness that are practical, that actually make sense, that actually can take a person and put them in a state of total power and creation. So let me explain what that state is. And this is something I tripped on when I was actually younger in school, in grade 10. My teacher came up to me and said, hey, Purdeep, why weren't you at the award ceremony the other day? And I said, well, why would I be there? They're like, the teacher said, well, you pretty much won every single award there was. And that became the norm for me. And I realized that through the things that I was learning at that time, through the studies, through my teachers, that whether it was a gift or whatever it was, I had stumbled upon something that allowed me to perform at a certain level where I could create things, where I could actually perform. I could go in and say, this is what I'm going to achieve, and actually achieve it. Whereas
that's like a repeatable process as well, with it being scientific and
exactly. Whereas everybody else was kind of aiming down here, I was aiming up here and able to get the same results. So there is this. And so you're going to have to follow with me a little bit here, right? We're going to take neuroscience. We're going to take psychology. We're also going to take quantum physics and mindfulness in here, and a little bit of spirituality as well. Because what would it be if we can't think about what's out there a little bit more than ourselves?
Got to be in there. I mean, Napoleon Hill talks about faith and all that sort of stuff, and and believing and going out and committed to that. So spirituality, faith, whatever format that you say, we're not hearing in any religious bias here or anything like that, but it's what you believe and what's about you. But believe you me, there is something that you've got to believe in there. So I'm all with you on that one, Purdeep, for sure.
Yeah, if you take a look at all the most successful people throughout history, they all had one single thing. They believed in something beyond themselves. Yeah. And that's the most important thing. But when it comes to a state of total power and creation, every being, every person has what we call an inner force within you. And that force, you've probably felt it in some way, shape, or form. When you are in this state where anything comes your way, you're like, I can crush this. I got this. Any challenge comes your way, you automatically come up with some kind of idea, creativity to overcome it.
Yep.
Or maybe you're in a physical state where you just feel this complete rush of blood flowing through your mind or your body and your mind, and you're just feeling completely alive.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we call total power and creation, where you're actually in, some people call it flow, some people call it other things.
The zone, I'm in the zone or something like that.
The zone. The challenge is most people can only attain it 1 or 2% of the time. Yeah. Right? You get in and then life hits you and you get knocked off the rocker, but there's actually a formula behind it. There's 3 things that are actually incorporated into that. One is your life energy. And your life energy, just simply put, is your energy of who you are, your being. And people ask me, well, Purdeep, what does that mean? Like, how do you know there's life energy? Well, it's simple. When you're alive, what are you doing? You're breathing. Yeah. Are you giving off energy? Yes. Are you consuming energy? Yes. So you have life energy. What happens when you're dead? Nothing. So you have no energy when you're dead. So that kind of gets people to understand, yes, they do have a life energy. The second part, because there's 3 ways to experience the world. You sense things, that's your life energy. Yep. You think, right? And you feel. That's how you experience the world as human beings.
Yeah.
If you align those 3 energies, that's when you're in the total power and creation. The challenge is most people are never aligned because they're either in a state of stress, they're thinking about problems, they're thinking about the future or the past. They're never aligned. And that's what I help them do. So the first one is your life energy. The second component is really your mind. And your mind is made up, if you think of yourself as a computer, your mind is made up of your brain, which is the hardware, and your thoughts, which is the software.
Yep.
What ends up happening though, is your brain, your hardware is pre-programmed, right? It's through an evolutionary standpoint, you're pre-programmed. So you're automatically thinking thoughts based on your evolutionary pattern. And most people can't understand why they have these self-defeating thoughts, why they're thinking certain things. The average person has 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. 47% of the time, you are not thinking about what you want to think about. Your mind is drifting.
Yeah, disconnected.
And so when you're disconnected, you can't tap into that because all our, let's just say our power when it comes to creation or thought is in our prefrontal cortex. And that is the thinking brain, the real thinking brain. Everything else is just patterns because your mind is a lazy organ. It likes to create patterns based on what it sees and has seen in the past and repeats. So most people are living on autopilot. 99% of people are living on autopilot. The moment you get up, you pretty much do the same old thing. You don't have to think about brushing your teeth, making a pot of coffee, doing those things. You got to break that pattern because when you live on autopilot, you create the same thing over and over again. You think about it.
That's what you'll understand this in corporate where, you're doing change management and people are resistant to change, aren't they? People fear change and sometimes, most of the times it's there for the greater good and you can kick on from it. But, nobody, when you do the sales training or, the personal development, people don't want to change. And like you say, they get lazy and they just default back into, oh, okay, well, I'll just keep doing it the way we've always done it.
Yeah, and it's not their fault, because if you're not taking in enough calories, for example, your brain is automatically going to try to conserve calories. So
Yeah.
you're not going to engage that thinking part of your brain. So there's different strategies to do that as well. But in summary, then you have your life energy, you have your mind, which is your brain and your
Yep.
thoughts, and you got to learn to control your mind and actually be the master rather than being the slave to your mind, which most people
Yeah.
are. And then the third component is something that a lot of people don't understand, is your emotions, the emotional mastery, because every single thing that a human being does, person does, is based on your emotions and your feelings. That's how you're programmed to actually achieve things. So a small thing is this feeling of hunger, for example. Well, your brain produces that to make sure that you feed yourself, that
Yep.
you have enough nutrients in your body. But then it goes into fear as well. You're meant to fear certain things. You're meant to feel things for 7 different perspectives of life through evolution. One is really to stay alive. Second,
Yeah.
second is to avoid disease. The third one is to create some kind of status. The fourth is affiliation, because you can't do things alone, otherwise you would starve. The fifth is to get a mate. And the
Yeah.
sixth is to keep a mate. And the seventh is kin care, is really take care of your offspring.
Yeah.
Everything that you do is based on those 7 things in
That's
some way,
awesome.
shape, or form. That's all it is. And those are the emotions that are created on purpose.
Yeah.
And so most people design their life backwards. They're thinking about the money they need to make, the lifestyle. They don't understand that you have to design your life around your emotions, the
Yeah.
emotions that you want to feel. So someone
That's
may
so
come to me.
obvious when it's played out into, I'm a very logical person, so
Yep.
I'm like checklists, and I like lists, and I like noting, I like ticking things off and highlighting them out and striking
Yep.
them out in Evernote and things like that. I love all that, and when you look at it, I'm scribbling furiously when you're talking here, and I'm thinking like, wow, and this realization's coming over me. So if you didn't get those, I'll put these 7 in the show notes for sure. So we'll get those now, and then when you look at them, maybe you can let us know if you agree or disagree or not. But it's so true. I'm looking at it. Awesome. Thanks, Purdeep.
Yeah, you're welcome. And so when people come to me, entrepreneurs come to me and they say, Pradeep, can you help me grow my business? I need to double or triple. I'll say, the first question I ask is why? What are you trying to achieve? What emotions do you want to feel? And that throws them off. And it throws them off for a reason.
Question.
It's a very unexpected question. And I purposely, because I will not help a person that wants to make $10 million a year, because if they're just going to feel the same way, there's no point. They can find someone else to do that. What I'm trying to do is help people live a better life as well.
Yeah.
And so design your business and your life around your emotions, because everything comes down to your emotions. Everything, every single thing, every decision you make is based on emotions. It's proven by science. In terms of my background, education, you could do studies. 95% of your decisions are based on emotions. So if you work backwards and you say, I want to feel more joy, more inner peace, whatever that is, then you can work backwards and say, okay, what kind of lifestyle do I need to have? What kind of finances? What kind of business?
What fuels that?
Exactly, because you can't have a high pressure an entrepreneurial lifestyle and want inner peace, for example, right? Or to have inner peace. It doesn't work if you're on the go, the hustle. Yeah, there's a conflict. And we're getting that a lot today. And we're seeing people like Grant Cardone. I'm very vocal about this. And high profile influencers on the internet saying, you got to hustle, you got to grind, you got to do this. Well, people are getting burnt out.
Yeah.
Not only burnt out, they're not achieving what they need to achieve because they don't understand that at some point in time. So here's when I talk about alignment. You have your energy, your thoughts, and your emotions. Well, some people might have their thoughts and I want to make $10 million, but their emotion and their life energy is telling me, no, there's something not right about that.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling good about that. I want to spend more time with my kids or my family or my spouse. Therefore, if they're not in alignment, they're not going to go for it. And your body and your mind, if we take a look at the neuroscience of your brain, it is a goal-driven organ. That's what it's. If you give it a goal and you align yourself, it will move towards that goal.
Yep.
But if you give it a goal that you're not aligned with 100%, it's going to flip-flop around. It's not going to find the solutions. It's not going to find the creativity. Just like giving your computer, if you say, hey, this is what I want to find, this is the equation, find the answer for me, it will find it. But if you say, hey, I'm looking for this, but maybe looking for that, or I'm not sure about that, your output isn't going to be effective.
You know, it's like whatever the mind can conceive, the body can achieve type of thing. It's that committed. You've got to have that not single purpose, but you've got to be committed to following something with a clear objective and a clear path. I think for mine, and I just want to pick you up on about all these online entrepreneurs about hustling and things like that. And I actually did one of our pit stop videos on our YouTube channel. If you just search the Growth Engine channel, you'll find it. And I challenged one of the online entrepreneurs about it, where they said, hey, you got to work 7 days a week, you got to do this, you this. And I actually sort of came up with a question really for the audience, which is, well, if I did 7 days a week, 18 hours a day, or 6 days a week, 18 hours a day, what would my output be when I get tired and I'm not concentrating as much? As I'm not saying do 5 hours, 9 while 5, you got to work out, you got to be up early, or doing a few late shifts, or sacrifice some other things in the earlier days. I'm all for that. And my own career over 25 years has done exactly that. But it was a question that, do I do I think it was 6 days a week, 18 hours a day, as publicly promoted. Or what if you did 5 days, 12 hours a day, or 5.5 days, 10 hours a day? Would you still get the same output? Because you wouldn't be as tired, you'd be more focused, you would have that balance to recharge. And it was interesting, some of the feedback that I got. You get all the people who want to troll you online. Well, he knows more than you. Who do you think you are? Well, okay, but it's not for everybody. I know some awesome entrepreneurs. They would remortgage the house, they'd stack the business up with credit cards on personal debt. That die for the business, and so it's not about that lack of commitment, but it's about getting that balance. And to me, I've done some crazy hours. I've been in the agency in the office at 2 a.m, and then been on a plane at 6 flying out of Spain to speak on the stage. And it's great, and you think it's great, but it catches up with you, and you're never going to deliver your best ever work. And you really do have to be in a better position than that. So, I'm not a big fan, Purdeep, of these, I want to work 50,000 hours a week, and I'm going to sacrifice 20 years of my life because now I'm in this position. I think that it might be good for other people, but it certainly ain't good for me. And the older I've got, the more important that looking back, and you mentioned about my story, and I apologize for hijacking your session here, but I think it's relevant that in those earlier days when we were growing, all it mattered to me, Purdeep, was the company. We've got to grow the company. We've got an AIM flotation. That means I can keep 35 to 40% of the business, float it for 16, 20 million pounds. It was at 20, $25 million. And that was the plan. And then I look back, and then the financial crisis came in 2008 and wiped us out. And we were a wheeled asset finance company in a finance recession. All the Christmas plays, nativity plays I missed for my kids. All the summer, parents' evenings, all the summer camps, missed them all. Look back, 1 minute the venture capitalists are saying to me, hey, Mike, you're awesome. Look, we're going to get another press release done on you. And hey, you're the leading guy. You've been quoted again. You and your team's been quoted in this list of ones to watch. Next, when the financial crisis comes in 18 months later, they say, and the numbers aren't where they should be. Mike, are you the person who's the right person to lead this company? Well, hang on a minute. Okay, I've got skill challenges and I'm still learning, but hey, we're doing the same things, but the circumstances and the suits of the venture capital world, and I'm not calling you all at the same, because I work with quite a few of you. I want to be clear on that, but hey, it's all about the numbers, and we got churned. I felt I got processed when I was in that stage. And to me, it was about putting the business right and everything will come forward. And at the time, I think, some of my fellow board directors may correct me, but I had 67% of that company in ownership that we were trying to float on AIM. And you think if we'd have floated for 16 to 20 million pounds, 20, $25 million, and that's what I was focused on. But it was the wrong priority. It was a totally wrong priority. I could have got the same results and had that time where I'd seen the Christmas plays, I'd seen the nativities, I'd been to summer camp. The child wasn't looking over and just seeing mom and not seeing dad as well. And it comes around. So, it's a difficult time. And I was certainly out of alignment, for sure, because I had the wrong priorities. I was driven, I was focused, just got the wrong priorities. And now I look back and guess what? Like I opened the show, guys, when I talk to you about time, the most valuable commodity that you've got, and I can't get that back. Even if I'd have made the float and we'd have floated it on AIM, I still couldn't have got that time back. What would the difference be? It's not a great deal of difference. So it's heartfelt sometimes. And I look back, and dare I say it, I look back with embarrassment because I got my priorities wrong.
That's okay. You know what? It happens to everybody. And that's the thing. And going back to that point is I like to put people on sprints. And that's exactly what you were talking about, business sprints, right? Whether it's 5 days on, 2 days off, 2 weeks on, take a week off for a month or whatever it is. I learned that from being being an orchardist growing up, because the crops had certain cycles. So we would work our butts off for several weeks or a month or 2 months, and then, take a couple of months off. And that worked. So it depends on what works for you. The other part is there's lots of studies now that are coming out that are showing 60-hour work weeks are not more productive than 40-hour work weeks. Okay. There's lots of studies that have been done when it comes to the number of projects that you're working on, because any more than 3 projects, actually any more than 2 projects, your productivity actually starts to come down. So the more you do isn't necessarily better. That's the big misconception. That's a massive myth. More does not equal to actually getting more done. So I'm glad you put that out there.
Yeah, and I think that segues really nice into that next point, which is, how do you actually get more done with less effort? And the theoretical side of applying that. Share us your thoughts around that.
Yeah, the first thing is understanding that you have to align yourself first, because you could work as hard as you want. And if you have some kind of inner conflict, you're not going to get as much done. It's like working, I would say majority of people work at a 40% level. If you align yourself, even if you get to a 70%, that's that much more thinking power, more emotional power you have to actually get the job done and actually be more effective. So that's the first step, is actually making sure that you're in alignment. The second step is really what, I like to talk about this is something that pops up into my mind all the time. It's one of my mentors said, demand creates productivity.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're going to put yourself and say, hey, look, I need to get this done within this period of time, it's going to cause you to actually focus and put your energies in that period of time. Even if you don't get it done, the next time it comes around, you're going to be more effective and more efficient in actually getting it done. So the easiest thing is really, I'm not going to say time management, because you can't manage time. You have to manage yourself.
Correct.
But planning your week out in advance. A lot of people say this, very few people actually do it. You plan your week out in advance, and you plan your days out in advance, and you actually take a look at outcomes versus activities.
Yeah.
Every single day is wake up and say, what is the one biggest business outcome you're going to have? And what is the one biggest personal outcome?
Yep.
Because a lot of people will put in business outcomes and forget about the personal one. And what ends up happening, you'll go through the week, you'll do 7 business and 0 personal. And so therefore, how do you feel?
The balance, yeah.
Right? So you could do it for a week, maybe. Maybe you could do it for 2 weeks, but eventually that will catch up to you. So you have to make personal choices as well. And this is the one thing, how do you get more done with less effort? Is you actually do less. You actually have to focus more on your personal life. As entrepreneurs, I can't imagine how many times I've come across people that are great in their business, not great in their personal life, and they have no goals in their personal life, like almost 0 goals. So
they take it for granted. I mean, I'm being, sticking my hand up, being honest. In that period I've just described, you just take it for granted that it'll be all okay when you cross the line, but that line's ever moving, and you never seem to get there, or it changes direction sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. So the first thing is to have goals outside of work in your personal life. Very important in your relationship, in your parenting, and something that you want to do on your own, and having those. So structuring your day is important. And when I say get more done with less, you can actually structure your day. So meditation is absolutely important. For me, when I work with entrepreneurs, that's a non-negotiable. Yeah. Because if you're not practicing mindfulness or meditation in some way, shape, or form, you're overworking your body and your mind. It's like running a vehicle with no oil in it.
Yeah, it's going to seize up.
Yeah, it's going to seize up, and you'll be amazed. Some people, if you're practicing meditation already, you'll be like, okay, this makes sense. If you're not, you're going to be like, this is foo-foo. How do you get more productivity from meditation?
Yep.
You do. I can go into the science. What it actually does is that actually aligns your brain waves, so you actually become more coherent. So think of your brain as a bunch of firecrackers going off, and they're going off at all these different times and patterns. Well, no wonder people are conflicted.
Yeah.
If you want to be more productive, this is really what it comes down to. I'm going to talk a lot, but I'm going to sum it up here in one sentence. It all comes down to the decisions and actions you take.
Yeah.
That's all it is. Business and life is about 2 things, decisions and actions. If you think about that, if you make more effective decisions and take better action, you are more likely to achieve your outcome and actually get more done.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a couple of things I just want to cover on that as well, get your view on. I'm not sure if you've got it over in Canada. I'm sure you have it as a global app. There's an app just come out recently called Calm. I don't know if you've seen it. And they advertise it on the television in the UK here. And it's a free app. There's an F2P free to play, and then you can upgrade to premium. And there's everything from just listening to rain, meditation, soft stories, snippets of popular stories like Orient Express, just to help you wind down at the night. And I've got it on my iPhone, and it's amazing. Just having that, I'm just gonna, it's like stop the world, I'm getting off type of thing, and it's that type of thing. So it's Calm. Search Calm out on the App Store, or I'm sure it's in the Google Play Store as well. So that's that one. But just want to back you up as well when you're talking about doing more for less. I'd like your thoughts on this. I'm a big follower of Jim Rohn, and I think I probably many people who've got every single piece of work, whether it's printed or audiobooks that he's ever produced. I seem to live in the Jim Rohn world, but he talks about people spend too much time or doing major time on minor things.
Yes.
Instead of, and he calls it get your majors and your minors right. And that's how I translate what you've just said. Other people will hear it differently, and that's absolutely fine. But, I see, and I know we're not talking just about time management, Purdeep, but, when they've got the to-do list, Jim Rohn on his to-do list, he has the majors there, and he says no more than 3 things on your majors, and then your minors. And he says, but most people are spending major time on minor things instead of doing the major time on the majors and the minor time on the minors. And I teach that to all my team here, and they go through like a goal planning session where they've got to get the 1, 3, 5, and 10-year goals done personally as well as business. And that, we say, when you're planning your day, look at your majors, look at your minors. And, we're talking slightly different terminology, but it's the same thing. And I get it so much. And it made such a big change to us. So, I don't know if you've come across that specific part of it, but a lot of similar stuff there for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It all comes down to outcomes, because people plan for activities, not outcomes. Yeah. What you're looking for is what is the result that you're going after, and plan for those. And I'd like to, and this is what I do personally as well, is the first 3 days, that's where I get my major outcomes. And you're right, I nail it down to 3 to 5, and that's it. And nothing else comes into my schedule Monday to Wednesday outside of those outcomes.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And then meetings and everything else will come after that.
Push to the back, yeah.
Push to the back. It's a simple exercise. If you stay disciplined with it, you're actually going to get way more done, a lot more done from that perspective. And the other thing is people, as entrepreneurs, we need to realize that we are our biggest asset. You are your biggest asset in life and in business. And so think of yourself as a race car driver, whether it's a Formula One or NASCAR, you are the driver. So if you are not in impeccable shape, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, it doesn't matter how souped up your car is.
Yeah.
You're not going to drive it as well as it needs to be. So that's why when it comes to the male entrepreneur, that's why we have 4 distinct values: family, freedom, passion, vitality. Awesome. Because those are the things that will lead you to have a more successful business.
Yeah.
So if you think about it from that perspective, because sometimes I get this all the time. I get people to put in what I call emotional checks every hour, and calorie checks and water checks. So every hour you need to do that to make sure you're getting enough hydration, you got enough calories in you, and you have your emotional state. Because going back to the emotional piece, if I say, if they say they want to feel more joy, more fulfillment in life, or inner peace, but as they're going throughout the day, they're not feeling it. It's not an outcome you're looking for. It's the actual process. If at 12 o'clock today, I'm not feeling joy or fulfillment, then I need to change what I'm doing right now or how I'm doing it. So if you're checking that every hour, you're actually going to create more fulfillment as you're getting to your goal.
Do you find, if people commit to the program and they're in and you get that, you always get the people who drop out of things or don't commit or whatever, but you get a lot of resistance to that, Purdy, where people saying, do I have time to check it every hour? Do you get that, or once they see it, do they normally understand it, or is it experience it once and then be okay?
Yeah, I think when they first hear it, I think what I get is people are excited. People are actually and they say, first of all, sometimes people do say, I can't, I don't get a chance to eat all day. Well, then I tell them, you got to reevaluate your life.
Yeah.
Because if you're not willing to eat all day, then that tells me that you're not willing to change your lifestyle. You got to make different You have to make choices. That's all it comes down to.
Yeah, and that's amazing. And it's just sometimes well, it's not that obvious, but the simple things when it's, and again, you'll notice my eyes light up when you give me a list, about emotion check, calorie check, hydration check. I get, that's the way to speak to me. If people just speak to me in lists, that'd be great, because I can understand.
I could tell that.
Tick them off and away I go, and I'm pretty cool with that. But yeah, and it's just the simple things when they're brought to the attention that you think, I get it, and it's awesome. So thank you for sharing that. And it links, and I suppose all this stuff's wrapping around creating a business and that life of passion, isn't it? But yes. I'd love to get your take on that, because, the business is, that fuel to go through. You've got to do what you love and all that type of stuff. But that creating a business and, and life of passion, talk to me more about that. And what's your view on that, Purdeep, please?
Yeah, so this is kind of my personal passion, and any and everybody that work with me understand that it's all about passion for me. And I have a tough time working with individuals that don't want passion in their life. And so that's kind of I would say a warning or caution for people that might be interested in the program, is because I want you to feel emotions. I want you to feel alive at the end of the day. That's the whole purpose. And it all comes down to passion. Having a purpose in life, having an impact. And I'm not talking about, you don't need to be the Dalai Lama. You don't need to be Mother Teresa out there, but you could even be the best parent that you want to be.
Yeah.
You could be the best employer you want to be, right? You have to have some goal in life that gets you jumping out of bed.
Yep.
That is the most important thing. Why? Because you're going to be that much more productive. There's tons of studies now that show that your degree of passion, commitment, emotions behind your decisions are what lead to your actual outcomes. Not necessarily the types of decisions, but how much effort you put into it based on your emotions. So just get that. The more passion you put into your decisions, the more likely you are to actually achieve your outcomes. It's a simple thing to do.
Yeah. It is, and you do what you love, and and I think we have a statement here, because I'm sure it's like that in Canada in the winter as well. But on a cold November morning at 5 a.m. when you've got to get up and get onto the train, and you've got a hell of a day in front of you, what makes you get out of bed at 5 a.m. freezing cold on a Tuesday in the middle of November? I'm not saying anybody necessarily just jumps out of the bed, but you've got to be motivated and passionate to go out and do that. So I get it. But a lot of people find that difficulty. And, I know there's a lot of online entrepreneurs as well saying, about, people live for the weekend and they're reaching for the weekend, and, they're stuck in dead-end jobs and things like that. And I'm not necessarily referencing that here. I'm just saying is that, and I agree what you said right at the top of the show. If you're not doing what you love, that time clock in Dan Kennedy's office is going down, and eventually ultimately stops and the lights go out, and, you don't want to be looking back with regret, and surely it's far better for any entrepreneur or person in life to do what they do. And I know people are sometimes slaved to, hey, I've got a mortgage, or hey, I've got the school bills to pay, or whatever. But you can make life changes that do make it. It's about actually what you said. It's about making those decisions and the actions you're prepared to take. So I get the passion. It's rare. I think people talk a lot about it, but when it comes to writing the check, I'm not quite sure that they're always as committed as maybe the vocally suggested.
Yeah.
So if you're out there and you're living that lie, it's okay to sort of stick it in your hand and sort of say, well, okay, either change career, change the role, or right role, wrong seat, or whichever you want to call it. But again, don't forget, if you want to learn more about this and you want to work with Purdeep, because I'm actually riveted here, my notepad's nearly full of notes and things like that, you can head over to 360abundance.com, check out the webinar, register for Purdeep's program, and that'll be a great way to start making some of these changes and feeling comfortable in raising your hand and saying, it's okay, I do need help. And that's one of the first signs, don't be ashamed. If you're interested in mental health issues at all, I did a podcast with a gentleman called George Hodgson from Mason to Shoop. And he talks about, coming out and being open about your feelings and being able to discuss that. Initially, there's that fear of what do people think, but it's a great podcast if you want to listen to that. I think it's episode 22 or 3 or something like that we did with George Hodgson. But, mental health, pressure at work, entrepreneurship, mindfulness, all different issues, all different related, but interconnected to you as a person, about being right in yourself, which is then obviously helping, to deliver better at home and deliver better at work. So big believer in the passion. Thanks for sharing that, Purdeep. I really do appreciate that. And I suppose it links in to the next point, which is, talk to us about teaching men how they can think, act, and feel, and be that, that man and that entrepreneur, the dreamer. Because, all this interconnectivity, taking action, doing all that sort of stuff, but it can be done, can't it? It is achievable.
Oh, absolutely. So, that passion piece is important, because the biggest thing to take out of there is that if you have employees, and you have a family, you have people around you, that's the energy that they pick up. So if you want to have people look at you in a certain way, feel comfortable around you, actually feel energetic around you, you got to deliver that passion yourself, right? Emotions is basically just energy in motion. You have to understand that. Yep. So passion is an important part for leadership in any way, shape, or form, whether you're the leader of an organization, your business, or your family. That is absolutely a critical thing, because that just delivers energy to other people around you. And that's what goes into the next part, which is, the thinking, the acting, the feeling, and being the man and entrepreneur that you want to be. Men, especially, and even for women, why are we working so hard? Why are we trying to create these empires? Or even maybe even if it's not an empire, why are we trying to increase our business size? It's because we want to feel a certain way. We want to believe that we are someone. Right? We're not necessarily, it's not the having that makes people happy. That's what people have a misconception about. The haves will not make you happy. It's the thinking, the feeling, and the acting, and the being, the person that you want to be. That is the ultimate end goal for every single person. So if you think about it from this perspective, is if you can think, act, feel, and be the entrepreneur, the man or the entrepreneur or the woman that you are trying to get to at some point in time, but you do that today. You think that way today. You feel that way today. You act that way today. You are more likely to achieve your goal, because people have this thing where what's the chicken and the egg, right? The chicken. Do you have a multimillionaire attitude before you become a millionaire, or do you have it after? And I know from experience, a personal experience, and working with many successful entrepreneurs, that if you want to be a long-lasting millionaire, you have to have the attitude of a millionaire first. You have to think, feel, act, and be the millionaire first, because you can come across the money and lose it all again and recreate it if you actually operate that way.
Yep. It's a default program. And again, I'm a book that turned my life around when I was 21 was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Yep. And there's a statement in there that says, believe you are already in possession of the money. And obviously he's talking about a monetary value, not necessarily a happiness or a family. Mm-hmm. But, if you want to, I think, and you've got to date this because the book's 1937. So, if you wanted £50,000 in 10 years' time, which is about $65,000, it's a small amount of money today, but, you've got to date that back to 1937. That's the reference that he gives. You've got to already believe and set yourself up that you're already in possession of that money. And not from an egotistical point of view, but from a mindset and an ability to go forward. So that's exactly what we're talking about in that sort of similar example there, Purdeep, isn't it?
Exactly. And when I'm working with entrepreneurs, it's interesting because I'll get them to a point where they agree, okay, I want to feel this way. I want to act this way. I want to be this way. I want to be this partner or parent or whatever it is. And then I ask them this one question. Okay, so what if you're that? We work on this for 12 weeks and you become that person, you feel that way. Let's just say you don't attain that business goal that you want.
Yeah.
You're on your way. Would it make a difference? That is a big turning question for a lot of people. Yeah. Because then they'll realize what they're working towards. Yes, you can still hit that. And I'm going to help them get there anyways, but it doesn't matter as much.
It's the journey. And again, I apologize. I seem to be in quote the philosopher's stage today.
That's awesome.
But back to Jim Rohn. And in his goal setting example, he says, set yourself a goal to become a millionaire. And he says, set yourself a goal to become a millionaire, not for the $1 million, because that's automatic once you hit that threshold, but for what you learn and become in achieving that goal. And that's exactly what you're talking about there. That, the goal that you set, you're not just going to bail out on it, but, if you're out there, with big, hairy, audacious goals, as they call them, that seems to be the trendy word recently, but that's fine, whatever you want to call them. But, if you did, set yourself a goal to become a millionaire and you achieve that, the money's automatic, Jim Rohn says. It's the man you become or the woman that you become or what it makes of you to achieve that goal. And you're going to be in a far better position. And if you drop short at 900,000, well, can you imagine what you've learned in the experience? That's 10, you can make that tenfold over and over and over again. So apologies for quoting Jim Rohn again there, Purdeep, but as I say, I do literally live and die by a lot of what goes up in that. And that's when I see that and I try and share some of those examples. It also puts a smile on my face and I'm sort of so energized at the moment. So apologies for hijacking it, but
no, not at all.
It's rare we don't get a Jim Rohn, a Zig Ziglar or something like that quote thrown in, or Napoleon Hill.
I love it. Yeah, very, very wise.
I'm not prejudicing your show here. It happens. So I apologize.
No need to apologize. It's great. We're speaking the same language here. And it's important. So again, back to the psychology, back to the neuroscience. If you can train yourself to think, act, feel, and be, you will actually execute better. So here's the pyramid of success through my decades of studying and learning. Really, it starts off at self-mastery. That is the bottom foundation. The second part is the stories you tell yourself. Because every single thing that you do is based on stories, whether you go down one path or another path, whether you do something, you don't do something, the way you look at someone or the way you look at someone in a different perspective. Those stories will then determine your decisions, which is the next level. And your decisions, again, remember this, every single thing that you do is based on a decision. But most people are on autopilot, so they're not actively making the decision. They're letting their brain make the decision for them based on previous patterns. Get yourself out of that zone, make active decisions yourself.
Yeah.
When you make active decisions, then you take action. And then your actions lead to your outcomes, right? So that is literally the pyramid.
It's awesome.
So if you can get that foundation built, that think, act, feel, that's the foundation. Your stories become aligned, you make better effective decisions, and then you take better and effective actions. Why do they not hit your goals? Yeah. It's not because they don't set the goals. Actually, goal setting is great. There's a lot of studies that show goal setting is more likely to get you to achieve them.
Yeah, it trains the mind to some level, doesn't it? That I've stuck my hand up, I'm going to have a go at that. But yes, it's science, like you say, behind it to execute on it.
No, it's the patterns that you create after that. And those patterns are determined by your self-mastery. What happens with most of us, and I fall in this category too, and I'm just more actively aware of it, is that we take 3 steps forward. We make decisions, we take 3 steps forward. And then something sideswipes us or something catches our attention or something just makes us feel self-doubt. We take 2 steps back.
Yeah.
So that whole decision action, those 2 steps are just, you're playing off each other. And sometimes you're playing off them in the wrong way, because you don't have that self-mastery down packed. When you have that self-mastery down packed, you have your stories aligned. All of those decisions and actions that you're taking are in sync, right? You're just in tune. You're running that race. You're not running that 3-legged race all over the place. You're just going forward.
Absolutely. That's awesome. And again, the think, act, feel type of analogy you've just used there again is great. And, the stories that you tell yourself. If there's anybody wanting a good read, I don't know if you've come across it, but the Joseph Campbell, The Hero with 1,000 Faces, or it's like it's all about the storytelling and things like that. So it's a bit of a thick book. It's not quite as bad as the 7 Basic Plots, which you could literally hit somebody and kill somebody with. But Joseph Campbell, The Hero with 1,000 Faces, or it's also sometimes known as The Hero's Journey. It's a great book about how to intertwine stories. And as I say, that's just me going off on a tangent there, but I'll put that link in the show notes as well for that book if you're interested in learning more about that.
It's actually a very relevant implication, because if we take a look at a component of psychology, which is neuro-linguistic programming, which was created years ago, but psychologists were able to shift people, transform them completely just based on having them change their own stories, their own life story.
Amazing. Amazing. And they do say that, don't they? I mean, I do quite a bit of public speaking, not as much as I used to do on stage. And, but when you look at all the people that the listeners follow, it could be marketeers, it could be entrepreneurs, it could be gurus, philosophers. They've all got a backstory, and that's how they start out. And, they'll change it ever so slightly based on audience time. But there's that core story down there. I've done this, I've been here, I achieved this, this was the crash or the success or whatever. Yeah. And people love the stories. That's what they remember. So it's a great point. So as we start to wrap up, Purdy, building a profitable business, we've talked so much about self-mastery mastery and that mindfulness and, all the sort of things that we've covered in there. What else would you like to sort of add in that? Because is there a missing component? Is it something that you believe stitches this together? Apart from the 360abundance.com course, of course, which is going to help you get there over 12 weeks. But what else would you like to add there? Is it, people sat there saying, great, I'm ready to get started. As soon as I finish listening to this podcast, I'm going to jump onto Purdeep's podcast. I'm going to sign up for that. I'm going to listen to that. But building a profitable business, what other sort of tips have you got around that? And what's your viewpoint on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I first actually left, as I mentioned, I wrote 2 books. One of them is called Superfans, How to Create Unwavering Customer Loyalty. I studied the best businesses around the world. I've traveled to, around the world studying the best. And it really came down to one particular thing. It's really creating super fans out of your clients and your customers. You have to take your average customers and clients and turn them into raving super fans. Why? Because this is what raving super fans do. They rave about you, which is so much easier today with social media.
Yep.
So it's word of mouth. It's referral-based business. They are that much more loyal. And if you take a look at what is the true, like if business just came back to one particular thing, I know a lot of people talk about marketing. Marketing is definitely important.
Yeah.
Peter Drucker talks about that. It's very important. But there's one step even further, and that is customer and client retention.
Yep.
Because if you think about this, if you kept every single customer that you've ever had,
build it, sled.
What would your business look like today?
Yeah.
Right? That is the important
it's a massive question. Can you just recover that? Guys, if you're driving in the car, pull over, stick the hazard flashes in, or, stop somewhere safe. Don't just handbrake stop. Pull over safe. If you're watching this on YouTube, rewind it, go again there. Just say that question about if you kept every customer. Just cover that again for me, Purdy, please.
Yeah, the question is, just imagine what would your business be like or look like today if you kept every single customer that you ever had, that you ever came across.
Awesome.
That would change your business phenomenally.
Just put a number on that. You don't have to do that live here, Purdy, but take a stop, count to 3 and just put a number on that and then just look back at it. Wow, what a powerful point. Thank you so much for sharing. Apologies for backing you up there, but it needed saying again. And that is awesome.
Yeah, and absolutely. And so it comes back to the basics of how do you grow your profits, right? You decrease your expenses, you get more customers, you get your customers to buy more, or you increase your price, right? Those are the 4 fundamentals outside of ventures and mergers and stuff. But those are the 4 fundamentals. And the easiest way to hit all 4 points, decreasing your costs, getting more customers, right? Getting your customers to buy more and buy more frequently and increasing your price, it all comes down to one thing, which is converting your clients and customers into superfans, because they are more apt, they're more open to buying more, they will pay more, they will refer. And servicing your loyal and your superfans actually will cost you less over time.
It will, definitely.
So if you want to have exponential change on your profit line, that's what you need to focus on.
Yeah.
And that, there's a number of things. I talked about the emotional impact, knowing your clients and your customer story, and actually being able to transition them, because there's a science behind that as well. Yeah. So the onboarding process, for example, the first 90 days, remember this, the first 90 days to 100 days are absolutely critical, because that's when your customers form the biggest opinion of doing business with you. And if you wow them off the beginning, they're more likely to stay. But if you don't, right, they're going to switch. They're going to switch really.
And they start getting, not necessarily buyer's remorse, as we call it, but, they'll start to sort of think, hey, did I make the right decision? And
exactly.
We're big fans of NPS scores. In our agency, we run the HubSpot agency, and we run Service Hub, and that's all NPS scores, and, the client at the center, everything. You've got to market to them. Hey, you've got to convert them, but hey, go and look after them and move them up that pyramid to advocates. And, I know there's various terminology for it, but, that client-centric approach. And, we've got to the point now where we don't even see them as clients. It's just partnerships. It's that type of bond where, you're responsible to do certain things and we're responsible to do certain things, and we're working to these common outcomes, and that partnership approach. And I'm surprised about how many businesses don't always see that. Oh yeah, well, I just want you to fill an RFP and like a request for price and request for quote. It's like, whoa, I don't do that. Yeah, but it's a big contract. Don't do it. I need to know who you are, and I need to build a relationship with you. And if we're just on the cheapest, thinnest line on the price, there's a dozen other guys and gals out there who you're going to be speaking to, because I'm just going to back out now. It's not about that. And that's not justifying that we want to charge you more or less. It's just I need to understand it and get that feel better. So that partnership thing is a big play to sort of help with that. If you're not familiar with NPS, Net Promoter Scores, you go check that out. Again, we can put a link in the show notes if required, or shoot us a message using the hashtag TheOpenMike, and we'll get those answered for you. But yeah, the raving fans is a big part of it for sure. And thank you for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So as we sort of bring out here, the depth that you've got in Purdeep has been amazing. Thank you ever so much. I'm energized, I'm motivated. Here in the UK, it's getting a little bit late, but I feel like I should have done this podcast in the morning so I can go out and motivate it. So thank you so much. The value has been awesome. What we try and do on the show is always try and wrap up with some sort of summary, which I certainly don't want to devalue what you've put in. There's been so much. So 3 things, if we could hold you to 3 things that we could summarize what the listeners and the audience could go out and do straight away. What would you ask them to list down in those 3 things?
Yeah, the first thing is believe that you can do more. So self-belief, self-confidence, that is the most important thing. And know that once go back to that moment that you just felt like you were conquering it all.
Yep.
And just, you felt like you were on top of the world. That's what you have to bring up more and more often, and actually be able to put yourself in that zone, because that is possible. It's not situation based, it's internal based. So understand that how you felt that way had nothing to do with the situation. It had everything to do with yourself internally. And you can recreate that over and over.
And often people get convinced, oh yeah, but I was younger then, or we were in a bigger business then. But that's what you're saying. It's not, it's inside.
It's inside. And the more you're able to tap into that, the more likely you will have success in your life and business and actually get more results.
Awesome.
The second piece is actually focus on the emotions. Create your life around the emotions that you want to feel on a consistent basis. So do some digging. And this isn't something that you should just spend 5 or 10 minutes on. Spend a few days, talk to your spouse, right? If you have older children, talk to your children about this. But say, okay, what are the consistent emotions that you want to feel yourself and as a family? And then work backwards and say, what kind of lifestyle do we need to live? Is it a lifestyle of traveling? Is it a lifestyle of, maybe sitting at home, watching more movies, whatever that is for you.
Yeah.
Work backwards based on the emotions. You will have a way better quality of life. I promise you that.
Awesome.
And the third one is really focus on the thinking, the acting, the feeling, and being the person that you want to be. Because this is something my grandfather told me about. And I will hold this forever. He said, people could take the education away from you. They can take your certifications. They can take away your money. Is that on my end here?
Yeah, I think it is. So I don't worry.
My apologies. So I didn't expect that one to come.
That's fine, don't worry.
Yeah, they can take away your education. They can take away your home.
Yep.
They can take away all physical assets that you have. They can even take away your shirt.
Yep.
The one thing that they can't take away is who you are.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And your values. So if you focus on that, you will get more done. You will achieve more. You will be more successful overall. I guarantee you anything. This is the basic foundation. Be that person that you want to be, and everything else will fall into place.
That is absolutely phenomenal. Straight talking, simple to understand, and realization comes to mind. And if you're ready to get started, the value that Purdeep shared in the show today has been absolutely off the chart. So thank you very much indeed. And you want to learn more, visit themaleentrepreneur.com. By all means, go and listen to more of these podcasts, the Male Entrepreneur podcast. Again, if you're ready to get started and you've heard enough and you want to go, head over to 360abundance.com, sign up for the webinar, and follow the on-screen instructions there to get involved in this 12-week program. I know Purdeep's happy to connect with you on LinkedIn, and again, I'll put the show notes down below. And as always, it's been, wow, the value has been amazing, Purdeep. Thank you so much for being on the show. I don't think ever on a podcast I've had so many notes filled in on there. So I think I've got some groundwork to do myself to go and start over, I think. And thank you for sharing it. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Hey, thank you for having me on the show. I thoroughly enjoyed it. This has probably been the longest interview I've had on a podcast, but I absolutely enjoyed it. It's been a pleasure working with you, Mike. Thank you.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. And thanks as always for tuning in, guys. Purdeep, have a wonderful time. We'll get the show release out. I believe this is going out on Monday, the 13th of May, 2019 for a date stamp. So we'll send some promos and some trailers out. And, we hope you understand and it's give you the inspiration and the impetus to go out there and, whether you work with Purdeep, you go and, find another entrepreneur or, another source of knowledge, just go and do it. Like we said earlier, go out there and make it happen. And as always, we appreciate you tuning into the episode and continuing your growth engine development. And as always, get in the game, go do the hustle, but not too hard though. Go make it happen, and we'll see you on the next show. Thanks for tuning in.
You have been listening to The Open Mic, brought to you by The Success Hub. To find out more and to get the resources we have mentioned in this podcast episode, simply visit blog.thesuccesshub.io and view the podcast section. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to catching up with you in our next episode. This podcast and associated materials is published under copyright to The Success Hub. All rights reserved. No reproduction of this material is permitted.